Welcome back, Tiger fans, to Rockin' Radio's football podcast. I'm Nate Edwards. That's Parker Gillam. This is Before the Box Score, your bowl season edition, your post-college football playoff edition, your number 9 Tigers in a Cotton Bowl edition. There's just a lot of good stuff going on. It's a great day, a great time to be a Tiger. The postseason being very kind to us. The portal just opened. Nothing too drastic happened. Parker, welcome back to the show, and how are you doing?
Doing pretty good. I was about to say, I believe I've been on here once before. Nice to be back. I could never fill the shoes that BK leaves behind, but I will at least try my best to, provide some insight that could resemble what he did. But yeah, it's a good time to be a Tiger. Transfer portal also seems like it's gained some traction, doing well there too.
I mean, it's the first day, and we already had kind of a rush of guys, putting their names in before it even opened, and then the fourth hit, and it's just, I don't know, my entire social media timeline was just dudes leaving,
Yep.
That being said season. And so it was, it's great. I lost track of everybody who's in there. We'll take a look and figure out what's going on then. But it's a whirlwind month. It's the best month and the worst month for college football, just because you have conference championships, you have the playoff, you have the bowls, you also have coach firings, you have all the commitments, the early signing period. It all just gets smashed right into a single 31 day season. Yeah. In the award season. Yeah. And you're doing all this during all the winter holidays, and then the new year, just, I would say feel bad for the coaches, but that's what the money's for. They know what they're getting into, but it's a particularly sucky time of year for coaches. But it's still a great time for us. And we're going to start off with the big news of the year, week, month, whatever you want to put it. Your number 9 Missouri Tigers are going to the Cotton Bowl. That is a New Year's 6 bowl. Now, I know I've read some people thinking that the luster is a little off because Missouri's been there 3 times before, back in the 40s, 2007, and then 2013. But Parker, Tigers, New Year's 6, and the opponent's Ohio State. Tell me what you're thinking right now.
I mean, it's such a shiny game. It's a big brand name in Ohio State. Granted, we'll probably get into it a bit. They might be without roughly half their roster based on transfer portal and NFL draft declarations, but that being said, you still have an opportunity to go out there and really solidify yourself as one of the emerging powers in college football. If you're able to take down a team like Ohio State, you win that game in the final rankings, you can move up, potentially as high as 6, maybe even in the final CFP rankings, if some things work out. So that would be really incredible, I think. And on the Cotton Bowl point, yes, Mizzou has been there a couple times before, but you have to look at the fan base. Is more prominent down there than any of those other New Year's 6 bowl spots. Used to, it was a hot recruiting ground for Mizzou. Now they've turned it more southeast for the most part, but you're still looking at Texas for stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of benefit to playing there. It's a great venue every time to play in good old Jerry's World. So, and I think you're getting a game against Ohio State, fairly evenly matched teams. I'm interested to see how Ohio State comes out, post Michigan loss, 3rd straight. Are they really feeling down? And Ryan Day's already gone on record saying he wants to finish the season the right way from momentum into 2024, but they're going to be without a lot of different players. So it's going to be interesting to see. Drinkwitz saying that Mizzou is more likely to have all theirs pending Rakestraw's injury status, but I was thrilled to see it. You had the worries of playing the Group of 5 team. Would they go Peach Bowl Fiesta somehow? And you got Ohio State, and that's big time.
Yeah. The worry for me was that we were somehow relegated to the kids table against the G5, which this year is Liberty. However you feel about that school in particular, if you got your New Year's 6 bowl and you were playing the Libs, like, you've just been relegated. And that's not the place you want to be. And Parker, I know you are an Oregon fan from your youth. Of course, so your Ducks got Liberty. And, you're already hearing rumors of like Bo Nix might not suit up, or like a couple other guys might not suit up because, it feels kind of like a letdown, especially for a team who's going to be super jacked to be there. So I'm just glad we avoided that bullet. I'm glad Mizzou is not playing the G5 representative. Fiesta would have been cool, but Dallas is cool too. It's a helmet game. And I think the best part about this, and if you want to take this as an insult, be my guest. You're fine to be mad about stuff, but Missouri's not expected to win. Like, it's because they look at the emblem on the side of the helmet, and if they recognize it, they pick you. And if you go up to my 5-year-old and say, list 5 college football teams, even she would mention Ohio State. Like, this is a Tiffany brand. This is one of the bedrocks of college football's brand, culture, whatever you want to call it, is Ohio State. So this is great. This is an opportunity to play them and beat them. I know Missouri has played them in the past. They're like 1-10 or something like that, and because they played them in the 70s and the 90s. So you're not expected to win, and that's great because like you said, Ohio State would be missing like 25 players. Does Ryan Day go to the NFL? I don't know. But I do think it's really cool that Eli Drinkwitz, to his transfer guys, the ones who are already in the portal, is like, hey, if you want to come with us and continue to be part of this magical team, this magical season, we would love to have you. That is rare. That is super cool. I don't know how many guys are going to take him up on it, but this is definitely – Eli is saying the right things. He is doing the right things. And it really feels like Missouri as a team is not only excited to be there, which is sometimes a backhanded compliment, but looking to win this game. And if, Ohio State's already without their starting quarterback, one of their top three receivers, Marvin Harrison might not be there. Like, if you catch them looking the other way, we know this, but the world might find out that Missouri's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. And I know I'm also really interested to see in how heavily the fan base travels. Already ticket sales have kind of been through the roof. Sellouts. I know that the student tickets, I believe, are a last gasp going on sale tomorrow morning, which would be Tuesday the 5th, I believe at 9 a.m. And I've got buddies that are waking up an hour before just to keep refreshing the page to make sure they can get the tickets. So, I've got friends that are getting their Airbnb plans going and, driving 6+ hours to get down to that. It is a major event, and I wonder about the Ohio State fan base travels well, diehard fans for sure. How excited are they about this game? Is that stadium truly going to be 50-50, or are we going to see, more black and gold heavy? I think would be really an incredible thing to really continue to support the team. And I think the players all playing will also kind of encourage the fans to show up as well. So I'm excited for that environment. I think just that entire weekend is going to be even in a knock on wood, even in a close loss, you are still celebrating this season for Missouri, regardless of the result of this game. So I think at the bare minimum, this needs to be us honoring and celebrating what this team has managed to accomplish when, I think I wrote about it last week. I told the fans, there was no chance in the world that Mizzou was going to be at this spot ranked like this in a New Year's Six Bowl. You didn't think that back in August. Here you are. Enjoy all of it because it comes few and far between. It could, as terrible as it sounds, plenty of teams in the past have had seasons like this. It's a flash in the pan. This program looks like it's building in the right trajectory to the point where I don't see that happening. But you take the seasons like this when you can get them. They're special. It's surprising. You look at Missouri, you're looking across the country now. I can't really point at a team that was a bigger surprise this season. Maybe Louisville, but they really kind of petered off towards the end too. You could look at maybe some of the Group of Fives teams showing up, but Missouri is your surprise team of the country this season, and the Cotton Bowl is the perfect ending. A historic bowl game that you've been in before, you have history in, against an opponent that draws in the fan base, and if you win, is going to demand the respect of the country. Nobody can ignore Missouri at that point.
Yeah. I have long believed that it's getting to the bowl that is the statement of the season, whether you win or lose. Obviously, it's better to watch your team win a football game. I understand that. It's still just an exhibition game. It's a cherry on top. If you lose, fine, whatever. If you win, that's awesome. Yeah, now look at us. Now we get to beat our chest for 300 days before the next game occurs. So yeah, it's the win is already there. The celebration is already there. I'm completely with you on that. You brought it up. Let's talk about kind of this program under Eli Drinkwitz itself. You mentioned the dastardly term flash in the pan, right? Like, this is just a one-time thing and they're going to tumble back to earth the next year. I feel like a lot of teams that fall into flash in the pan territory did so because of a specific hire, of a specific recruiting class, all kind of coming to age at the same time. Maybe you have like a Larry Coker situation where you became the coach of a super talented team that you didn't put together. You weren't part of it, but like you took the reins at the right time, and then it kind of fell apart in your hands. So like a Larry Coker, like a Mark Helfrich at Oregon, if you want a local, more recent example of that, where you didn't do the work, but you got the benefit off of it. And not that these guys aren't qualified, but you have those situations. And, people have compared the builds of Missouri, from Larry Smith into Gary Pinkel, or from Gary Pinkel into Barry Odom, or Barry Odom into Eli Drinkwitz. And, for Gary, for certainly Eli, they were building from a pretty low point. And they didn't do it with, with sleight of hand. Obviously, Gary really took off once he moved the offense to a spread with Chase Daniel, with the surprise greatest quarterback in college football history, one of them. But he didn't do it with like just, glass and mirrors, right? It was a legitimate build. And I think Eli Drinkwitz falls into that territory too. Now, I understand that it's bad juju to talk about this while you're in the middle of it, but how did Eli do it? Well, number one, he found a defensive coordinator that he liked. He found an offensive coordinator. He gave up play calling responsibilities. But the thing is that not only do they recruit high school really well, and we can argue about whether those guys play or not, but they lifted the recruiting profile, but really they nailed the transfer portal. I mean, I can think of two guys that didn't really flesh out. Bency Polgar, because of academic reasons. You could argue Nathaniel Pete, even though he started multiple games, he had 100-yard games. Like, you got to stretch to find someone who really did not make a positive impact through the portal. And in this age where you need to find those kind of market inefficiencies as a school like Missouri, Eli Drinkwitz and the staff recognized that, got really good at it. And I feel like identifying talent is a core thing that you need to be good at in college football. And whether it's high school or portal, these guys really have figured that out. So that's why it makes me feel like it's not a flash in the pan. What do you think?
And yeah, now I think I agree with you. And now we've got to the point where Drinkwitz is going on record saying, I'm having enough guys approach me about coming back. And I've had so many, guys in the portal already reaching out, sending me their stuff, to the point where I'm at a point where I can be incredibly selective. I think he was quoted multiple times this year saying this is the first season in which he has been really be able to tell some recruits no and some transfer portal guys no. That's the sign that you're making it as a program. So, I mean, I agree with you. I didn't flash in the pan. I do that out there more as a possibility. This is, I harp predominantly in being around the program kind of in person a lot. The culture, I think it's a term that is loosely thrown around a lot in sports, but I do legitimately believe the culture from athletic department down, and Desiree Reed-Francois, I think, has done a phenomenal job, at least from my perspective, in terms of the entire athletic department since she stepped foot in this campus. From her down, the culture across the board is so connected and united, from the coaching staff to the players. It's hard not to want to join in on it, I think, when a lot of guys visit, which I think is really what the driving force in this is. Yes, you have the on-field success, the flashy offense that some guys are wanting to be a part of, Blake Baker's aggressive defense guys really enjoy playing in. But it comes back to that culture for sure. So, yeah, by no means, I think this is the program still on an upward trajectory. Reaching 10 wins again is going to be difficult. You look at the changing landscape of the SEC, adding in Texas OU. One could argue, looking at Mizzou's schedule, it maybe is overall easier, but the overall makeup of the SEC is getting more difficult. And how you adjust to that life, recruiting battles change with Texas and OU being able to claim that they're now in the SEC. So there's a lot of different things there, but you're playing with house money at this point. I think the other big thing that Drinkwitz will have to do, and it's going to be difficult, and he's not going to be able to keep everybody, but keeping the staff together as long as he possibly can. It's not going to be forever. You've already heard rumors, Kirby Moore and Blake Baker both. They're two young up-and-coming coordinators. You love them while you have them, but they're going to be destined for bigger things at some point. How long can you keep that? And then when they leave, can you maintain what they left with you? That's going to be a big thing down the pipe. But I by no means think that, the portal losses that we've seen so far, I think were a lot of high school guys that they brought in that either didn't pan out or got kind of butted out by some transfer portal additions, which happens when you're striving to be a program at this level. As terrible as it sounds, you're going to have a lot of high profile 3, 4, maybe 5-star guys that don't work out and have to transfer elsewhere. And that's perfectly okay, because that means you've gotten to a point where you've got enough guys in front of them to where you don't need them necessarily, as terrible as that, kind of does sound. But that's a sign. Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, they have these types of guys transferring every single offseason because they aren't getting their time. That's a sign that Missouri is really a program that's kind of reaching that level. Not quite there yet. The biggest thing I think I will harp back on consistently throughout this offseason is, how do you maintain this level across the board? Recruiting, transfer portal, NIL, keeping everybody on the same page. So many coaches in the past have struggled with maintaining that year to year. Can Drinkwitz do it? That's going to be the biggest question he's kind of faced with this offseason. But I think he has all the tools to do so.
For sure. You mentioned the portal losses. Let's review those real quick because it's not many right now, but you obviously want to anticipate more coming down. If you think back to last year, and I've had a couple of conversations online about this stuff, Missouri lost 25 guys in the transfer portal last year. Now, you can go to the transfer portal story that I put up on rockemnation.com. You could go to the comments. You can see every single one that I put in there in the school that they ended up at. Dom Lovett's the only one that I would say transferred up, right? Went into a program that was demonstrably better than Missouri, which was Georgia. You had 7 players make a lateral transfer. So in that sense, I would say a school that's very similar to Missouri in a different conference. Okay. 16 of those guys transferred down. And some of these were like community college or FCS, not just G5. And then you have one guy who's still in the portal from last year because just nobody wanted him. And when you look at that list of guys, nothing against them. I mean, recruiting evaluations miss all the time, but they weren't going to play at Missouri. Some of these guys aren't even playing at their new school. And sometimes that happens. So to your point, when you look at this stuff, it's going to be guys who are buried on the depth chart that got years to play. And frankly, if you only have 5 years to play and you have the option to transfer somewhere for free without a penalty, why wouldn't you do it? Why would you not do that? The goal of the players in college football is to play college football. If that's not going to be the case at where you chose a school when you're 18, by all means, at age 19 or 20, go find that new school, go find that new program. There is nothing wrong with that. And that is good. To your point, if Missouri is saying, yeah, go ahead, that means that they know they can replace that with somebody else either coming in or someone who's already on the depth chart. So that's a good thing. Now, again, no shot against these guys, but here are the ones that have left so far. And Parker, we'll do kind of just a group analysis unless there's one that you want to pull out specifically. So far, Missouri has lost offensive tackle Valen Erickson, which in my mind, not watching practice, I thought he was a logical replacement for Javon Foster, but okay, apparently not. Valen Erickson is gone. EJ Ndoma Ogar, who transferred here before the transfer portal was a thing. That's how long ago it was. He started at Oklahoma, came here, and he's back in the portal. Also thought he would be a good replacement for Xavier Delgado at guard, but okay, whatever. Missouri also loses Max Wisner, the tight end who saw a couple of snaps this year, and that was basically it. He was a redshirt freshman. You lose Damian Wilson, a linebacker who had about 50 snaps on defense this year. Lost Xavier Simmons to the portal. He was a medical redshirt for this year. DJ Wesolak, the ballyhooed 4-star out of Boonville, Missouri, the pass rusher who was a linebacker last year, pass rusher this year. And then, of course, Carmicah Glass, another linebacker. So those are the guys. And there is an overarching theme, which is linebackers. But is there anything else that kind of stands out to you, Parker, or anybody that you want to talk about specifically from that group of losses?
Yeah, I mean, for me, you look at a lot of these guys, it's not a ton of, local products, DJ Westlake withstanding, which I think is another thing you look at. You're retaining your guys that are wanting to stay home. A linebacker, you mentioned, obviously, when you've got 2 guys and Chuck Hicks just announcing that he's going to return today, Tristan Newsom, you've got 2 guys that you're seeing to step in for Hopper and then Chad Bailey, who didn't play a whole lot this season regardless, but still, you've got those 2 guys set in stone. That makes sense. Max Wisner, I think, is the same deal where Norfleet just really stepped up throughout the season. You're still going to need a second tight end, so he's not playing all the time, I would imagine, but you're not going to – Wisner was looking for a lot more than that, obviously, and I think you're going to be able to find that secondary tight end in other places. I think offensive line's the only – I don't even want to say concerning per se, because I still think there's enough for them to reload. And I do anticipate Drinkwitz going after. I think when I was looking at it, offensive line was probably my second or third position, just overall offensive line position of need. In the transfer portal, I imagine them getting at least 1 or 2 guys through there, much like they did last year. Mm-hmm. So you're not looking too concerned there. I do think, not keeping him kind of in the state, yes. And also just it seemed like he had such a high upside at a high school. So either misevaluation there, or just a guy that wasn't able to see the field when, again, edge rushers have been – it's interesting because before last season, edge rushing was looking at like one of the weaknesses of this team. It ended up figuring itself out through the portal and the move of Darius Robinson over. So it's interesting losing him. I think that's the one you look at and you're like, wish we could have kept him. But otherwise, I really think – I mean, Damian Wilson I thought had potential, but he clearly just did not earn that spot over Newsom and Hicks. And at that point, what else are you going to do? So far, none that are too necessarily damning, but moving forward, I think offensive line, you're going to need some guys to step in, at least for depth purposes, the bare minimum on that front. So we'll see. I mean, there's so much more in the transfer portal that's set to come out. I mean, as you said, my phone has been similarly just alerts all day, shiny names, people saying, "Oh, this guy's rumored here, here, and here." I'm of the opinion that you just wait until the transfer portal officially closes and you let all the dust settle and you evaluate your incoming and outgoing after that. You really can't take it on a day by day basis because it is changing at the drop of a hat pretty much every minute.
Yeah. And yeah, it's crazy. And then there's another window that opens up after spring. So it's like this is never done. The rosters are never done being constructed. Yeah, I would agree. Wesselock is a bummer from a narrative standpoint more than anything. He seemed to be like a pure pass rusher. He almost seems more like a 3-4 outside linebacker rather than just a pure defensive end, because like that he just rushes the quarterback, which there's nothing wrong with that. Dudes have made a living off of just rushing the quarterback. That's one of the things that the NFL values the most. But you did go into this season with we don't really have a solid answer at pass rusher. And that's the one thing he did, and he couldn't get on the field. Couldn't do it. And then Austin Firestone from Northwestern saw the field. Joe Moore from Arizona State saw the field. DJ Westlake couldn't see the field. Now I understand they're a little bit older, but Firestone's the same age. And that clunky white kid got a sack and was really good in the snaps that he got, and Westlake couldn't get on the field. So I think the story was very clear there. And a lot of this also ends up where does he end up? That's gonna influence a lot of how we feel. Because if he ends up at Alabama, not saying that's gonna happen, but just for an instance, Alabama, you're gonna go, oh, how do we not hold on to that guy? We had him. Mm-hmm. But if he ends up at I don't know, Toledo, a solid G5, or in Miami, Ohio, all right, okay, that makes sense. That's probably where his skill set put him, and he was not going to see the field here. So I think that's what the ending spot affects a lot of how we look at this. And then of course, how they did. And yeah, to your point about Damian Wilson, God, in 2022, yeah, because it's 2023, 2022, he played in 10 games. He had almost 170 snaps. But it was
Georgia game. I remember he flashed at least a couple times. People were really talking about him heavy after that game.
Yeah, but he's inconsistent. And then Tristan Newsom shows up and wins the job, as the backup. We're okay, well that was it. So I mean, I think losing 3 linebackers is, you kind of pick your head up and go, oh, that's kind of weird. I also think personally, it was just a heavy position group. It was 10 guys, and you only have 2 spots that you play. So, you rotate 4. And I know a lot of linebackers are special teamers. That's a good place for you to see the field. Will Norris, he's been a special team ace for his entire career here. He's been kind of the 3rd or 4th linebacker since he got on campus. So, I mean, you need linebackers, but also there's only 2 spots that really start, and you had 10 guys. So I think that made a lot of sense. The other position group that is very gluttonous right now are the safeties. Now, part of that is the freshman class that's coming in. You have guys, 3 of them who projected safety or another position, so we're not sure how that goes. But you could easily see yourself with Carlisle Charleston coming back, to join Dalen Carnell, which, that really makes you 9 deep, possibly 12 deep. So, that's a position where you could see some losses potentially as well, and I wouldn't sweat it. But yeah, this is offensive line is going to be on every team portal shopping list every single year, no matter how good you are, because everybody needs a Power 5 starting caliber offensive lineman. That even Ohio State and Michigan and Texas and Alabama have a hole on their offensive line. Well, we could probably upgrade that one. So that's always going to be tough to pull out of the portal. You really can't build one. You can supplement, but always have that on the list. This is my point. Always have offensive linemen. If you can get one, go get that guy. Missouri got lucky last year with Cameron Johnson and Marcellus Johnson. Can we strike gold twice? I don't know, but that is a good one. Was there anybody who entered today that stood out to you? You go, oh, that dude needs to be a Tiger tomorrow.
Entered today. There's been so many names going around entering today. I know. I mean, when I wrote last week, Treshaun Ward from Kansas State, running back, had announced that he announced last week, and I just think he's the type of guy. Started at Florida State, went to Kansas State. I'm unsure he might maybe have to get a waiver to be immediately eligible, but just never been the main guy in a backfield. But he's shown the flash, highly touted of high school. He's shown flashes of what he can do. And if he was the featured back, I think he'd put up some really big numbers. And he's also, Kansas State uses a fair amount of that stretch zone that Missouri almost exclusively uses. So he's got familiarity there. He's got good explosiveness on the edge. Because I think at this point, when you're Missouri and you're looking at a running back, Cody Schrader's a little bit of a different kind of just entity entirely. But you're not looking for a bruiser, really. You're looking for a guy that's going to get on the outside and beat some dudes in space for the most part. I think that's what you need to target there. So I running backs play one of the other big ones, kind of obviously with Schrader heading out and Pete, of course, as well. So that'll be interesting. You've seen a lot of, wide receiver's not a position you need, but you've obviously got some guy. Will Shepard's a name that's been thrown out there, a guy you've seen a couple times in the SEC, a big bodied receiver. If Theo Weiss does leave, which who knows on that front yet, might end up coming back, you might need a big body replacement though. That can be your red zone guy. Maybe Shepard's that guy. So we'll see on that front. And there was a decent amount of D tackles, offensive linemen I kind of looked at. I can't really pull any names at the top of my head, but I guess another kind of point I did want to bring up, it kind of to your take on it, is when you look at the outgoing transfers, and I feel like Missouri fans kind of play this game of sorts throughout this transfer portal cycle. When you were talking about, do they transfer up, laterally, or down? When you look at the 7 guys that are declared already that they're going to leave, how many of those guys do you look at that are even going to transfer laterally? Maybe Westlake, potentially Wilson. I don't know about the rest. EJ had the pedigree out of high school, but he's also now tried it at 2 stops and hasn't made it. So that's something you also have to look at with that. So interested to see where those guys end up. That'll kind of also be a tell in how the transfer portal works out. But I am interested. I know, and people have thrown out Trevor Etienne, people are saying maybe he ends up entering, and that's a perfect fit as well. Who knows? I don't know if he's going to end up leaving. That seems like all people trying to make that happen out of thin air, but we'll see.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd be okay with that. Running back is a place where you need at least 2 guys. You can't just go into a season with 2 freshman running backs who have barely seen the field. So that's just asking for trouble. I would be good with Etienne. Obviously, that would be great. But you need a guy who knows the zone blocking that Missouri does and the stretch run, right? Because what Cody could do that Nathaniel couldn't was really get a feel for how those blocks developed, how those alleys showed up in the zone blocking scheme. Pete had a trouble with that, and he'd get hit in the backfield all the time. Cody was able to hit and go. So the guy that really stood out to me that entered today, who knows that scheme, has the Boise pedigree, Ashton Jeanty, baby. That guy is
officially entered.
Yeah.
I didn't realize he had officially entered. Okay, interesting. Never mind. That is my number 1 name as well, because he's phenomenal.
6 hours ago, Boise State enters. There he is. Ashton Jeanty, transfer portal. So, look, that's your guy. And who's our guy? Kirby Moore. Yeah. Kirby, when you're going home for Christmas, go stop by and tell him to come to Columbia. That would be my. But you got just 2 running backs. Give me 2 running backs. Somebody with experience. That's what I'm really looking for. We will see how that goes. But the portal's young. It's again just opened up today. There's going to be a lot more losses for Missouri. There's going to be a lot more entrants. I think the Missouri leaving group might be a little more quiet until after the bowl game, because there's still like 3 or 4 days, I think. Once their bowl game is done, that you can still enter before it closes. So I kind of feel like more noise is going to come at that point, but I don't know. Speaking of noise around the Missouri football program, it's award season, right? Just listed with all the other portal season, playoff season, bowl season. It's award season, and your Missouri Tigers are getting recognized for what they did this year at an unprecedented level. We're talking all SEC picks from the AP that dropped today. And boy, you want to talk about some first team guys? Because Missouri's got some first team guys. First of all, Cody Schrader, unanimous AP all SEC team. That's the first unanimous all AP player for Eli Drinkwitz since Tyler Beatty in 2021. Also a running back. Imagine that. Schrader is unanimous. You have Luther Burden, you have Javon Foster, you have Darius Robinson, you have Chris Abrams-Drain. They're all first-team All-SEC. You also have Cameron Johnson, our illustrious right guard who transferred in from Houston. You have Harrison Mevis. They're both second-team AP All-SEC. And the AP SEC Coach of the Year goes to Eli Drinkwitz, the head coach of your football Tigers. Parker, what world are we living in where Missouri's getting recognized by the press for good things? This is incredible.
Goodness, it's like they're acknowledging that Missouri exists and that it's a state and that it has a football team. It's absolutely wild notion. But yeah, I have kind of honestly one name that I really want to touch on the most here. Schrader makes complete sense. Obviously unanimous. Katie, same thing. I could have seen him being almost unanimous as well, just based on his play throughout the year. Luther, Javon Foster, Darius Robinson, and making the move from defensive tackle to defensive end this season. And Drinkwitz talked a lot of this season about how committed he was to that, just to make this team better. When the coaches approached him and asking him, saying, "Hey, we don't have a lot of experience in defensive end, we don't have a lot of returning production. You've got both of those things. And we know that you're a good enough pass rusher to where you can make it work, cut some weight." First 3-4 weeks, it wasn't until the Memphis game when I think he really started to settle into that role. Johnny Walker was kind of more taking the reins outside up until that point. But just for him to get first team All SEC honors at a position he just moved to after playing defensive tackle for the previous couple of years, and how productive he was at it. On the side, not even on the side, really the main dish for him is how much of a leader and the voice of the locker room he was, and just how pivotal he's been from that front. But his play on the field, Darius Robinson, Johnny Walker formed that great duo, yes, but I think later in the season especially, you saw D-Rob really flashing more. I think he was one of the most pivotal X factors to this team's success this season, just in him being able to be productive off the edge. So really impressed with that. Cameron Johnson, I think, was great to see. I think early season, everybody saw the flags, saw the penalties, and everybody was like, Cameron every single game. But he progressed as the season went on. I think in terms of the straight up blocking role of his job, I think he did well. He just needed to commit less fouls. But him doing that, and then Harrison Mevis, I could totally see. I believe was it Reichert? Yeah, that was set in stone. Reichert is, I don't know if he broke it yet, but I believe he's all-time SEC points leader.
Oh, geez.
At this, or actually, he might be all-time NCAA, something like that. He's all-time something at this point, but that makes sense. But Mevis, second team, certainly will take it.
I'll see. Now I got to look it up.
Yeah, because he's won it. Because I know in the Auburn game they were talking about it. He was close to breaking it because he's been there for a while.
He's got 530. Oh, Reichert has 533 points.
So I know Reynolds might be.
He's got it. He overcame Reynolds with the last kick. So
okay.
Yeah,
hard for me to beat that, but hey, still pretty good nonetheless. But I just think the amount of guys again, and then I didn't even touch on Drinkwitz, but for him to win SEC Coach of the Year, again, that's something you would have told Mizzou fans at the beginning of the year. They might have laughed in your face, but it's where we are now.
It is wild because you always want to give credit to a football coach for putting the program together and getting into getting all the wins, even though Missouri was projected 6th in the SEC East, I think is what it was at the beginning of the year. I feel like, when you're in sports, when you're a player, when you're a coach, you always talk about adversity, right? You gotta overcome adversity to get to where you want to go. And I don't feel like Eli Drinkwitz has had a ton of adversity. Like, people calling for his job weren't really Missouri fans. They're all on the outside, like, oh, he might be on the hot seat just because he's 2 games under 500. Like, you just kind of grasping at straws. I know there's always a vocal minority of any fan base that constantly wants the coach fired. And there's a vocal minority of every fan base that just thinks he's, the best thing since Bear Bryant. So, like, cut those out. I feel like Missouri fan base has been pretty patient with Drinkwitz, pretty reasonable for the most part with what he's done. So I don't feel like he's gone through a ton of adversity, but to the point that you made earlier, getting people to acknowledge that Missouri is a state with a school that has a football team is sometimes tougher than you think. And people just kind of pencil in for 6th every single year because it's not Vanderbilt. So I'll give him credit to that. I know there's when you look at Coach of the Year, some people think, well, you give it to the best team, obviously. And there's a group of people that think, well, you got to give it to the coach who did the best job. which usually means doing more with less. And I fully subscribe to that latter. Now, I also am a fan of a team who does more with less constantly, so I'm a little biased there, but I have no problem with this. I don't think Kirby Smart needed to win it a third time, or Nick Saban to win it again. Like, I truly think that Eli Drinkwitz, given what people thought he was going to do, they thought this team was going to do, and what they ended up doing, that is the best coaching job of the year. Absolutely should have gone to him, no question about it. And I'm glad that he got what he deserved in the good way.
And I also point out just I think one of the biggest things that people don't look at enough as a head coach is who are you hiring? And the two coordinator hires he has made have been home run hits each time. So I think you got to look at him in that light. I think also just such was made, and I think a lot of this was fan created, but on Drinkwitz calling the plays those first couple of years he was there and kind of maybe being unwilling, according to some, to give up those roles. Well, he did. He finally gave that up. Still has a say in the offense for sure. So he admitted himself he still does, but handed those reins over to Kirby Moore. You saw what the product was when he still had his fingerprints on it, but he and Moore saw things similarly enough, and you got a guy in there that was dedicated to it. I also credit him a lot for that and how he's been. I've seen him really develop as a coach, frankly. He's still a younger guy relatively to a lot of the coaches out there. Only had that year at App State as a true head coach before this job. So he's still learning. That's a beautiful thing about it. He I'll bring in the other sport, and this Dennis Gates. He and Dennis Gates both in very similar spots in the sense that they have both self-admittedly said they are still really learning, but it's great to be learning when you're also having success. And that's fortunately what they're both doing right now.
Yeah. And, I don't know what other awards are going to be coming down the pipe. I don't feel like Schrader's going to win the Doak Walker. I don't feel like Burton's going to win the Blitnikoff or anything like that. But again, recognition of like doing a good job. I know that Schrader missed out on the Heisman invite for the top 4. There's nothing saying he's not going to be top 5 or top 6, but like, I don't think he was ever going to win it. Like if a running back was going to win the Heisman this year, it's going to be Ollie Gordon out of Oklahoma State, just because he has such incredible production. So, kind of like the bowl game, right? Like you want to win it. You want to win the award, but sometimes the real reward is the fact that you're recognized in the first place, that people outside your program went, hey, you are good. Hey, you should be recognized for what you've done this season, which again, it's been 10 years since this sort of thing has happened. So this is all good. This is, I said at the top of the show, it's a good time to be a Tiger. I mean, look, you just got a New Year's Six Bowl. Your players are getting recognized for big national awards. Like 7 guys on your team are all SEC. We haven't even gotten to, all Americans, and who knows what's going to happen there. It's just Missouri's being recognized. And as a Missouri fan for my entire life, it's a rarity. So we should breathe it in and enjoy it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's got to be. I mean, I'm not as well-versed in the fandom, but I feel like probably since 13 or 14 is probably the most guys they've had selected, I would imagine. If not, I mean, shoot, maybe even more this year than some of those teams, I would think.
I mean, if you're talking about AP, excuse me, AP all conference, the 2014 team had 3 guys, Shane Ray, Marcus Murphy, and Bud Sasser. The 2013 team had 4 guys, Michael Sam, EJ Gaines, Justin Britt, Coney Ely. To get to 5 first teamers on the AP ballot, you have to go back to 2008.
Wow.
Jeremy Macklin, Ziggy Hood, Sean Weatherspoon, William Moore, Jeff Wolford. What did the 7 team have? 7 had Chase Daniel, Jeremy Macklin, Adam Spiker, Lorenzo Williams, Jeremy. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so 2007 had 4. No, they technically had 5 because Jeremy Macklin was an All-American as a wide receiver and as an all-purpose guy. Ha-ha!
Nice.
So, yeah, 5 individuals only happened one time since. So, pretty good.
There you go.
So, we'll see what happens with All-American. That vote comes later. But, yeah, it's pretty cool. And don't overlook that. So, your team is in a great bowl. Your players are getting recognized. Everything's going great. And really, the only big negative thing I can think of, well, at least that's Missouri adjacent, is this whole college football playoff thing that everyone seems to have an opinion on. And I don't know. You are more in tuned with kind of the national level of college football than I am at this point. I monitor it not as closely as you. So your four teams: Michigan, Alabama. Well, let me do an order: Michigan, Washington, Texas, Alabama. And if you haven't heard, there are some shenanigans because, of course, Florida State finished undefeated, but because their quarterback is lost for the year, finished fifth, I think is what it is, and we're not invited to the playoff. So the whole commotion is, how can a Power 5 team go undefeated, win its conference, and not be in the playoff? That's the hullabaloo. I'm just going to clear the floor and let you talk for a little bit because my opinions are not as strong as anybody else's. What did you think when you saw that reveal? What is your potential worries for the future?
Since the dawn of time, it has been most deserving versus who's the best four teams. And that is the argument that everybody has until they are blue in the face. And that will always be the case as long as there is pretty much any form of committee selected playoff in this. You factor human error into this, and that's what we sacrificed the BCS because we were sick and tired of the computers choosing everything for us. Well, now you've got humans doing it for you. And I don't think people like that as much either. When I saw the four rankings, I was pleasantly surprised. I didn't think they would have the guts to do it, to leave FSU out because of how much backlash they would take for that. But it's right. Those are the four best teams in the country. I could even make a sneaky argument that Georgia is probably one of those top four too, but they couldn't have made it. Regardless, Bama proved winning the SEC, how they finished the season. Yes, the Auburn game. That's the Iron Bowl. That's different. Bama proved they belonged in that group. Texas proved with their play throughout the season. I think when they were playing their A game, they're one of the top two teams in the country. They both proved that they belong there. Florida State, yes, they would not have been playing with the third string in the playoff. They would have been playing with Tate Rodemaker's second string. So maybe it's a little bit different. Even with the second string, they're not one of the four best teams. You hate it. Injuries, part of the sport. It's plagued so many teams throughout everybody's favorite team has had a season that has been completely destroyed by injury. And you look back and you say, what if? This is almost the ultimate case of that. With Jordan Travis, they're a national championship caliber team. Without him, they did not deserve it. We would have seen them walk out there, play Michigan, lose by more than likely 20 plus, just because they don't have the offensive capability to do it. And I don't see their defense, while yes, great, incredible NFL talent on the defense, they would not be dominant enough to take down another playoff team purely off their defense. So I was fine with it. I understand Florida State's, because what else could they have done? They could not have done anything else outside of nitpicking, maybe not gone down to North Alabama and been playing sloppy, and Jordan Travis has to, really, really try in that game and then gets injured. But that's all kind of hypothetical. I was fine with it. I think there's no moving into the 12-team playoff next year. There is no greater year to kind of have this momentum going into, because now people are all clamoring for this 12-team playoff. I originally was against it. I've come around to it. I will go ahead and point out to all the fans that don't think this is true, the 13th and 14th teams are going to be just as angry as the 5th and 6th teams are right now. Yeah. There's going to be more teams in it, so they're not going to have as much of a voice probably as some of these more prominent teams nowadays, but still going to be people pissed off at the end of the day. You're always going to be excluding someone that feels like they deserve it. I do think with the selection process, though, you saw it throughout the rankings, not even just the final rankings this season, though. And we complained about it for years now, really. And that's just kind of what you're getting when you've got rotating committee members and they're just human. There needs to be a concrete basis of what you're evaluating on. Because we saw multiple times this season where they would rank someone, I'm trying to think of a specific example, but someone above someone off the eye test, but then a couple spots lower would rank someone higher based off resume, and someone higher based off head-to-head, but not further down the list. I believe it was they kept Texas in front of Alabama forever, but they put Kansas in front of Oklahoma State at one point, for instance, who Oklahoma State had previously beat. There's just no continuity throughout it right now to where they're saying they've gone on the whim that it is a combination of most deserving and who looks the best. And yes, that's fine. You can get away with that maybe for the first couple weeks, but at a certain point, you have to really choose, what do I value the most? Or it seems like these past couple of years, they've really just gone to that final ranking and said, we're going to throw out most of what we've done prior to this, and we're going to complete. I mean, Georgia dropping to 6, realistically, losing by 3 points to Alabama should never happen. TCU last year lost to K-State and still qualified for the playoff. This year was different in the sense that I believe it was a couple weeks ago, there were still 5 undefeated teams. And it was the latest in the season. We still had 5 undefeated teams in 20 plus years, something like that. So this year was different in the fact that you had a lot stronger contenders with a lot prettier resumes than usual, made it a little bit more difficult to butt someone out. With that being said, I understand the grievances. Someone out of those three teams, Bama, Texas, Florida State, all had legitimate claims. One of them was bound to get waxed by this. My point is, I think it was Greg McElroy. Someone said it, that how do you have a playoff without an SEC team? You can't really. Deion Sanders even said, I think, too. How do you award a national championship to someone without the SEC representation? Texas, it was looking impressive and had beat Bama. How do you leave them out? FSU never lost. How do you leave them out? It's a pick your poison. I think that was the right poison.
Yeah. There's no right answer. And for 10 years, the committee's gotten very, very lucky that it all kind of worked itself out by conference championship week. And it was very, okay, we got our 3. And really the debate was around 4. And, your mileage may vary, but I always figured like the 4th team made plenty of sense every time they put them in. The problem is that you had a 4-team playoff and you have 5 power conferences. And yeah, this year you just had undefeateds way longer than you should. November was not nearly as bloody as it usually is. So there's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. Do you think this sets a precedent of it doesn't matter if you are ACC, Big 12, Pac-2? Like you gotta look pretty and play pretty unless you're a Big 10 or SEC?
I mean, yeah, I've been of the opinion for honestly ever since this realignment wave started that we're going to get to a point 5-10 years down the line where most of the college football that people care about resides in the Big 10, the SEC, and then maybe you've got 1 or 2 strong teams from the Big 12 or ACC that plays somewhat of a factor in the national role. The Big 10 and the SEC are going to run this sport, and eventually I think the SEC is going to be the true dominant force. With the way Greg Sankey is running this and how kind of expertly and to an extent ruthlessly he's kind of gone about this, the SEC is on a track to really own this sport. So I think SEC Big 10 are going to control it in the future. I'm interested to see if anybody can emerge from that new look Big 12 and become a national power. You're seeing Arizona rising up. Maybe Utah does it. Deion's at Colorado still. So maybe that can help them. ACC is very different just because they're locked into their contracts. FSU and Clemson one out. UNC one's out. That's going to be a whole ordeal that I'm guessing they're going to end up breaking up before that contract runs out. But we'll see on that front. But I do think SEC Big 10 are going to run most things. Thinking that 12-team playoff, you're going to see, throwing numbers out there, probably at least 3 SEC teams per year and at least 2 to 3 Big 10 teams. And that's half your playoff at that point and from 2 conferences. And that's probably on the lower end each year. You're going to have 3 to 4 SEC teams that deserve it probably every year based on the schedule they play.
Yeah. Clemson and Florida State have been barking about revenue sharing for years, saying that they deserve more because of what they bring to the table. And then Florida State gets the door closed on them for the playoff. So they were already pissed off. And now you got, senators writing in saying we're going to have a committee to hold you accountable, and which is funny because Rick Scott, who was the senator in question, he penned a letter today talking about government intervention. He was the one who signed into law that UCF got to claim the national championship in 2017. So this is kind of his thing. But if you are a government representative from the state of Florida, it's a good idea to be, have your finger on the pulse of football. I get that. Not saying he's disingenuous. I'm just saying he's doing the right thing for his constituents. Yeah, I don't know if this sets a precedent just because we go to 12 next year. And, I've said it a couple times on social media. I do not care about this kerfuffle. Do I feel bad for the Florida State players? Yeah, I do. Do I feel bad for Florida State, the institution? No. You had a national title 10 years ago. You're going to be fine. Maybe you go to a different conference because, hold your breath, plug your ears, take your ball and go home. Okay, but I don't care. You're going to have plenty of opportunities in the future, especially in a 12-team playoff. We're just picking, which historic blue blood gets to play this year. That's all we're playing. And so I don't particularly care. I do feel bad for Jordan Travis, though. If he genuinely thinks it's all his fault and he wishes he broke his leg earlier in the year, that's disgusting. I feel really bad for him. I feel bad that he feels like he's put into this spot. That sucks. Grand scheme, though, I don't care. And frankly, when you get to 12, who's 13 this year? Is that Oklahoma?
No, yeah. They're 12.
They're 12. Okay. So LSU. LSU would be 13th, right? Yeah, you lost 3 games. Don't lose 3 games, you'd be in the playoff. Like, the argument is just so much better when you get past weird random 4, which is always the oddest number to go with. But yeah, the argument will still be there because people are people, fans are fans, and you're always going to feel like if you were this close and shut out, oh, heart-wrenching. And it might even happen to Mizzou. So I'm already saying it ahead. It will suck for Team 13. Team 13 probably also lost 2 or 3 games. You shouldn't do that if you want to be in the postseason. So it's going to be fine. But yeah, here's the thing. I'll just say Florida State got effed, but it was the right choice to put somebody else in there, because in the end of the day, the college football playoff works for ESPN. They need to put a good product out there, flat out. And Alabama and Texas were going to be better, more competitive games than Florida State. So people are anachronistic. They make choices that do not line up consistently. That's just kind of the beauty of people. Playoff committee are people, baby. And really, see, my theory is that the top 4, really the top 6 in any of the playoff reveals, those are the only ones that they really think about. 8, 9, 10, all the way to 25. They're just putting them in there so like the top 6 have quality wins, so they can justify having them there. That's why it doesn't make any sense really once you get past 10, which it's fine. So yeah, I'm going to watch the playoff regardless. Even if Florida State was in, if Alabama's in, I was going to watch it regardless because I'm a nut job that watches this stuff constantly. So they did a good job. They did a fine job, and I don't think there's going to be long lasting repercussions. Of course, I say that now, and you know how the butterfly wings flap in college football, but it's going to be okay. Any last thoughts on the playoff that Missouri's not playing in this year?
Missouri's not playing in. Yeah, I mean, I something to encourage Florida State fans, and you were pointing it out as well, but this is only the beginning. This was Mike Norvell's breakthrough season. This is probably the first of, many more than likely for him, just with how they're recruiting and kind of the brand, and also think about how motivated they're about to be coming out of this next season. I mean, they're going to be trying to rip people's heads off. They're going to be like, all right, we didn't win by enough. Our people got hurt. Oh, well, we're going to go out and beat everybody by 50. They're going to get Clemson at home next year. I can certainly see them running the table again next year. I don't know who they have in non-con, but they'll get Florida at home too. So, I mean, listen, I think they will be just fine at the end of the day. Last point is, notoriously the playoff has had, top of my head, I think there's only 3 or 4 semifinals in the playoffs histories that have been really closely competitive, entertaining till the end. ESPN has been trying to fix that. College football playoff has been trying to fix that. Well, you did that with these semifinals. Throwing Florida State in there, you're going to get another game that people turn off by halftime. Your reviews are way down, or your ratings are way down. Mm-hmm. What was the point of any of this? So I think that's another point. There's a lot of different factors, maybe some that shouldn't play as big of a factor as they do, but there's so much that goes into this that it's impossible to analyze it, but another thing I guess you did brought up, I forgot about I do like your point about the margin between 4 and 5. You can nitpick that so much. People aren't going to do the same thing for 12 versus 13. Because, it's going to be you lost 3 games or you have this terrible loss in your resume, like where we can't throw you any bones. So there's going to be some small arguments, but it's not going to be as heated as it is.
Yeah. Plus, it keeps teams involved longer. It was a fascinating season this year because we had so many undefeated teams. There's so many stories. There's more games that mattered. In the end, isn't that what you want? Conference championship games should matter for something. The regular season should matter for something. And when you have so many slots open and games can be opportunities to either stay in the race or be cut out, like that's what you're looking for. So, it's going to be a good move. I don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but it's going to be good.
And the only thing I worry about, and this is more just me selfishly, I think I am in the minority here, but when that 12-team playoff goes around, I can't see bowl games existing much past that. They're going to be so obsolete, and people are going to be so disappointed when they're not one of those top 12. Goodbye, famous Idaho Potato Bowl. I think I don't know how hopefully it'll stay around for a bit. I don't know. And I don't like that, but I think a lot of people in the country are already like, there's too many bowl games. Why are we doing this? I think there's a lot of value in them. I could go on a whole different tangent about that, but that might be one of the unfortunate collateral damage. But if that's the only one, we'll live.
Yeah. The NIT still happens. The NIT still makes money. No one really watches it, but if your team's in it, kind of give a crap about it. Yeah, there are too many bowls, but there's also a lot of money behind it. So it's until the money goes bye, you're really not gonna. I don't think they're gonna go away. But yeah, I will miss, mayo getting dumped on coaches or Pop-Tarts being eaten, like Pop-Tart mascots being eaten, which is going to be a thing this year. It's just
there's
very
avocados
upsetting.
from Mexico Bowl this year. It's great. I will say the one thing coaches might not like about it, so many coaches value and adore getting that extra practice time in December. That's something maybe some coaches are gonna be missing out on if that does go to the wayside. But especially when you're trying to build a program up and you're like a 6-7 win team looking to keep doing more, that extra practice time could be great. But that is nitpicking a little bit.
Yeah, but you got recruiting that you have to do, the transfer portal that you got to do. I know they still practice, but like, man, those coaches might secretly be like, "Whew, yay! Don't have to practice anymore. Just gotta work on holding on to the team that I put together over these past 3 years." Like, God, again, that's what the money's for. I'm not crying for it, but it's tough out there, man. There are so many different directions we can go with this college football at large on this Missouri podcast, but we will shut it down there. Your Tigers play December 29th. They play Ohio State, which is freaking awesome. I'm going to try and be there. I'm trying to get credentialed again. They let me do it once. I'm going to see if I can do it again. But yeah, it's a big dang deal, and your players are awesome, and your coach is awesome, and people are recognizing it as such. We're going to have a ton of analysis as we get closer to the end of the year on rocketnation.com, both from Parker, from myself, from Jaden, from everybody else on the football beat. We will give you as much information as we can about Ohio State and all the transfer portal additions and subtractions as we go through. So stay tuned to this YouTube channel, to our website at Rocket Nation. Just listen to us, read our stuff. We're good at what we do, but that's going to be the show for today. As always, we appreciate the downloads and the subscriptions. Leave a comment or rate us. We love all types of feedback from you all. You can follow us at Twitter. I'm at NateEditors. He's at Gillam_Parker. And of course, you can follow the Rockin' flagship at Rockin' Nation and the podcasting outlet at Rockin' Radio. We appreciate you tuning in this time. We'll try to do better next time. And until then, MIZ.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning into Rock M Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, just click the subscribe button below. And you can find this podcast through the Apple Podcast app or for iPhone, the Google Podcast app for Android, or whatever app you use to listen to your podcast. We are also available on Spotify. Just search for Rock M Radio. And if you like other sports, Fans First Sports Network is a podcast network that has coverage of all other teams, Major League Baseball, MLS, NFL, whatever you want to listen and read about. It is a great network full of really fantastic podcasts. So look them up and subscribe to any and all of those podcasts. Rock M Radio will be back with more episodes coming soon. Thanks.